Bienvenidos a Taboo Talk Latina Edition. Yo soy Cynthia.
And I'm Jeanette. And here at Taboo Talks, we keep it real, raw, and rooted in our cultura. This is the space where we break generational patterns, healing, grieving, and among many more taboos, speak en lo que nadie quiere decir and celebrate the stories that make us powerful mujeres. Today's episode is deeply personal, emotional, and powerful. We're talking about grief, love, and the resilience that comes from navigating life after unimaginable loss.
Our guest is someone whose story has touched so many. She's a mom, community builder, entrepreneur, and the founder and president of Divinely Social Events, a boutique event company that creates rich experiences. But beyond her success in business, she's also the voice behind The Grieving Wife, a platform born after the sudden loss of her husband while pregnant. Today, she turns her pain into purpose and helps others feel seen in their own journey and grief. Grace, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. We're so honored.
Ladies. Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you for having me. Jeanette, right? I should have asked you first. Jeanette, Janet, like, I have a cousin.
I know,
I have a
Janet,
cousin who
right?
goes crazy every time somebody's like Janet and she's spelled just like yours. She's like, it's Jeanette.
Yes. And we usually get that response from Jeanette because everybody just goes with Janet or they write it Janet, Janet. And I'm like, no, it's a long way.
Okay.
So thank you for asking. Yeah, good.
Yes.
And Grace.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And before we dive into today's topic, we want to take a moment to honor your story. For those of you who may not know, can you take us back to that moment that changed everything? Share with us the woman you were before the loss and how that grief changed your identity and how your roots and faith have carried you through it all.
So you guys have actually caught me in an emotional period of my life right now. My story is emotional. Father's Day was a week ago or so, and his birthday is on Monday. So these 2 weeks for my family are very emotional. But basically, I met my husband in like 2011. We became friends and we started dating in 2013. We got married in 2015, had our daughter in 16, bought a house in 17. We started our company in 2015, right after we got married. And he was my best friend, my favorite person in the entire world. We have a friend that introduces me, and when we talk about our story or whatever, he's like, no, they're like the married people that actually liked each other.
I love it.
Because we did, he was the person that I told, all secrets to. Like, there's nothing about me he didn't know. Every chisme, whenever I would hear something, even today, if I find something out, instinctively, I want to grab the phone and call him. Or I want to grab the phone and text him and be like, hey, this happened. So we went through the pandemic. I have a stepdaughter, and she's 6 years older than our daughter. And Gracie was already in the pandemic 3, turning 4. And I was like, if we don't have another one now, like we're just not gonna do it. There's already a lot of age gaps and that. And becoming a mom was always something that for me was super important. And I wanted a lot of kids, but life happens and, you get involved. And we were like, okay, let's do it. If it's now or never, let's do it. And I got pregnant super fast after removing my IUD, like way faster than I could have ever imagined. And we were in the middle of the most beautiful time of our lives. Business was starting to pick up again because after the pandemic, the events company, had slowed down, all these things. We had all these plans of all the events, because I got pregnant and I was due it during my most busy time, which is like November, December. I was due in November. So we had all these events lined up that he was going to manage because he loved events. He was actually a DJ for Power 96 in the late 90s. So he loved parties, events, everything. And then we celebrated my birthday, October 20th. We did our last big event together on October 22nd. It was a 600-person Halloween party. And then I had 1 week of like nesting and resting. And November 1st was my C-section. And we woke up October 25th. I had gone to bed super late because I had gone crazy cleaning and everything all around the house. He ran late to work. He actually stayed in bed playing with Gracie a little bit longer than normal. Gracie was sitting down having breakfast. I was standing up behind her. He came here. He said, I love you, gave me a kiss, gave her a kiss, and walked out the door, stood at the door. Right now, I can't remember what he said, but then he said, I love you. And I said, okay, I'll see you later. And he walked out the door. I remember calling him around 10:30. And I was in that panic mode of like, oh my God, we haven't cleaned the car and the baby's coming in a week and this and that. And he's like, don't worry. I already made an appointment and we're going to clean the car. Don't worry. Like he was like, I was in that mode of like, and I texted him at 12 something and he didn't answer. Like late, it was almost 1 o'clock, and I texted him, and he didn't answer. And my mom had saved food for us from the day before. They had a party at the house, and we hadn't gone because I was afraid of catching COVID. And then I ran late to pick up my daughter. I was always the first car in the pickup line, but I stayed talking to my mom a little bit later, and I was actually the last car this time. I was on the phone with one of my vendors talking about an event. I remember making the left and getting into the pickup line, and his best friend calls me and tells me, "Did you hear about Gabriel having an accident?" And I'm like, "No, he probably hasn't called me because he doesn't want to worry me. I'm 38 weeks pregnant. Let me call him." And I just hang up. I didn't even let him like finish talking. And I call Gabriel. He doesn't answer. This is already like 1:55, almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I call his boss, which was his other best friend. No answer. I call him again, no answer. And I call his best friend again, and he answers. And when he said, "Listen to me," I just knew. I just knew. It was this thing inside of me that I knew. He goes, "I need you to calm down and remember that you're pregnant and grab Gracie, go home. I'm going to meet you there." And I go, "What happened?" He goes, "Please just listen to me." I'm getting like goosebumps as I'm telling you this.
Yeah.
And he tells me, "Please just grab Gracie, stay calm, remember you're pregnant, drive home, and I'm going to meet you there." And I go, "Listen, I'm closer to my mom's house because the school was, go meet me there." I pull off to the side, and I see the security guard bringing me Gracie. And I get off the car, and I ask him, "Hey, can you please put Gracie in the car?" And I tell Gracie, we speak a lot in Spanish, and I'm like, "Mamá tiene unos dolorcitos en la barriga. I'm going to go hablar con la maestra so that she can drive us home because I don't feel well driving home." Gracie went to my elementary school at the time, and my teacher from kinder, second, and third was standing there. God puts us in places where we need to be sometimes. And I got off and I walked straight up to her and I said, "Gabriel had an accident and he died, and I need you to drive me home." Like dead face, like this. And she goes, "You didn't hear right." And I go, "I heard right, and I cannot process right now because I don't want Gracie to find out like this." She goes, "You didn't hear it." And I go, I don't argue with me. I just need you to grab your purse and I need you to drive me home." And I have that personal relationship with her that I can be like, and two teachers came out. We got in the car. I called my sister. And the same way that I spoke to my teacher, I spoke to my sister. I said, my sister worked about 5 minutes away from my parents' house because she lives around the corner. And I told her, "I need you to get in the car. Gabriel died at work," like this. It was so robotic at the moment because I couldn't process. I didn't want Gracie to find out. And mind you, nobody had confirmed it, but I just knew. And I tell her, I go, "I need you to go home. I need to drop off Gracie to you. I need to go to my parents' house and deal with this." And she goes, "What?" And I go, "Stop asking, just go." And that's what we did. We drove home. I dropped off my daughter. I gave her the food my mom gave me. And I said, "Here, so you can feed her." And I'm like, "Don't say anything. Hold your emotions. I'll be back later." And I drove to my mom's house. I called my mother-in-law. I called my stepdaughter's mom. Well, I called my mother-in-law's neighbor. And I told her, "Bring me my mother-in-law. Gabriel's in the hospital and we need to go together." I didn't want to tell any of it because she lives far and I didn't want her to, and I didn't want her to find out through a phone call. And I wanted to tell her in person. Then I called my stepdaughter's mom. And after I made all those calls and I left my daughter, that's when I broke down. And I hugged my mom and I'm like, "I lost Gabriel." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "But they haven't told you." And I go, No, I know." And then everybody started pouring in and the confirmation came. He died. This machine was not properly balanced and the machine fell on him and killed him instantly.
I saw it on the news and I remember seeing, and I'm sorry, I'm like, and it's crazy because you never know what's going to happen.
I'm trying to hold it back because when I lose it, I'm going to lose it.
I'm
It's
like,
okay.
oh my
And that's
God.
what we're here for, right? And you know how you look at things online and you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm praying for the family," right? But it doesn't hit you as hard when you know them, right? So I get goosebumps because when we met you and then now having you on, looking through your stuff and your story, I'm like, you were her, the person I was praying over. And the person that I saw that happened to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, like I can only imagine what they're going through. Like life is so crazy, and having all these thoughts, and now having you here sharing that, like really to know your story, it's powerful, and the way that you went about it, like that resilience within you of calling everyone and handling it the way that you did, that is powerful. And you
Yeah.
don't know how much power you have within you until something happens.
Yeah, you are so brave. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Like, I think you just pulled strength where you didn't have it because to block your own emotion to protect others, that takes a lot.
Wow.
I knew that I had like the hardest conversation coming up was going to be with my daughter. Um, that day I didn't see my stepdaughter. I didn't get to speak to her on the phone. Like it was, I physically couldn't drive or even go. Like I had so many people. I had my daughter, I had the belly and everything. And I remember speaking to her mom and she's like, "We'll go by tomorrow." And I was like, "Okay." But I knew I had the conversation with my mother-in-law coming. I didn't want my son to suffer because I didn't know what affects my emotion in that moment. And yes, he was going to be born in a week, but like I didn't know how that could affect him. And let me tell you, my son is the happiest person, like the happiest kid. But yeah, that day I remember calling the pediatrician and asking him how, I'm thinking of telling her, he had an accident at work. I don't want to fluff it. I don't want to lie to her. I don't want to tell her the raw truth, but I don't want to lie because everybody talks. And the last thing I want is for her to hear things from the environment that are the truth, but I lied to her. And that was the most difficult conversation I have ever had in my life. Sitting
How
her in
old was
front of
she at the
me.
time?
She had just turned 5 a month ago. I remember walking to my sister's house because, like I said, she lives a block from my parents' house and I needed air. And my brother came to get me. We walked over and I sat her down on my sister's couch and they walked away and left us alone. They were close enough, but far enough. And I told her and I said, you remember how Abuelo Papi and Abuelo Yillo are in heaven and we pray to them and this and that? She's like, yeah. I go, well, Papi today was at work. He was outside and a machine hit him, unfortunately. And Papi is now in heaven with Yillo, which is his dad, and Abuelo Papi, which is my grandfather. And she looked at me and she was like, and I was like, Papi fue para el cielo con Abuelo Yillo y Abuelo. Like she didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I remember I go, Papi's not coming home. And I just kept trying to see if she would react. And she wouldn't. And then I said, Mi amor, I'm so sorry that this is happening. And when I said that, she just broke down. Like that's when she understood what I was trying to say. And my daughter's a very mature kid. She's grown up with adults and older kids the majority of her life. So when she said that, she hugged me and she cried and cried and cried. And she's like, can we play with slime? And I was like, okay. And we went to the dining room table. We played with some slime. And this little girl looks up at me and she goes, if Papi would have been inside the office, this wouldn't have happened to him. And I look at her and I'm like, how is this little girl who's 5, like processing that if he wouldn't have been standing there, this wouldn't have happened? And we keep talking and playing. And then she goes to me, she goes, Mommy, so Papi's not going to meet the baby? This is all happening in like a 10, 20-minute conversation as we're doing play. And I'm playing with slime, which I hate. And, we're just sitting there and she's looking at my face. She goes, I know you don't like this. And I go, no, but we can play. And I go, Papi will meet the baby. Papi's going to meet the baby in heaven because remember I told you that, Abuelo Papi and Yillo and all of our angels are taking care of the baby until he's born. So Papi will meet the baby this week. You'll see, I promise. And I had bought the baby a onesie that said, chosen in heaven by my Yillo for earth. And I had gifted it, surprised my husband with it. And it was like the backside of my father-in-law with the baby next to him. Like they were just sitting, looking out, that was going to be his first outfit. And because my son is named Gabriel for my husband and Tomas for my father-in-law's middle name. And then she looks up at me and she goes, so what about all the matching clothes that we bought for Papi and the baby? They're not going to wear it? And I'm like, I'm sitting here trying to process. And this little girl's processing like so much faster than anything I could imagine. And we had the conversation and I said, do you want to go with me to Abuela's house? Like the family's there, Yaya's there. She goes, no, I want to stay here a little bit. And I said, okay. I go, well, I got to go back because I have to talk to some people. But whenever you're ready, you can go, or I'll just pick you up and come back. And that was that day.
And they say kids don't know, and they know.
100%.
I think that we don't give them enough credit, but I also think that we need to be more open and speak to them like people.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. We need to let them grieve the same way we grieve because we might think, oh, she's 5, right? She won't know what's going on, or she might not fully understand what it is to grieve, right? So the fact that you sat with her and you just let her be her and speak her mind, play slime, do whatever she wanted at that moment, that just I'm sure she's gonna remember that moment that you let her speak her mind and let her speak her emotions.
Yeah, she ended up going a little bit to my mom's house. She was a little overwhelmed, so she went back. And I remember my nephews, took her to the park. And, everybody was just attentive to her. The next day, we went to her school. I said, "Do you want to go to school?" She's like, "No," and I'm like, "Okay." I think she went to school like the third day, and the school was amazing. Like I said, I went to the school and they all took so much care of her and were very patient with her. Immediately, we both started therapy. I started first about a month or 2 later, and then she started right after because I wanted to make sure to find the right therapist for both of us. Of course, I was giving birth a week later. So for me to go to a place to take her to therapy was hard at the moment. So I found an amazing therapist who started coming to the house. A week later, when I went to the hospital to have my C-section, so many things lined up for him to show himself and for him to say, like, I'm here. I remember we walked into the hospital and I told my sister, I go, I'm very nervous. Like, how is this all going to work? I hadn't had a planned C-section. Gracie's was an emergency C-section. I don't know how any of this is going to work. The head nurse came. The hospital was still kind of shut down for COVID, but they were amazing. They opened up a conference room and allowed my entire family to come to be
Wow.
a support to me. And they allowed the girls to come meet the baby. But prior to that, when we get to the prep room, it was the same room that we had been in for Gracie. I mean, goosebumps again. I was
Yeah.
like, how could it be with this entire floor
I know.
of labor rooms and all these things that I would be in the same room? And I remember it was the same room because I remember the way we walked in and turned and stuff like that. I was like, this is the room. It was a corner room. The lights in the room weren't working. They were like, the lights aren't working. We put you here because it's daytime. We have the window open. We don't really need the rooms because you're not going to give birth in here. But they were like, the lights were working this morning and they stopped working now. I don't know. To me, it was like a sign. Actually, there was another sign. I woke up to a swarm of bees in my terrace. I had never had a single bee in my backyard. And I opened the door to let my dog out and it was thousands of bees.
Gosh.
And if you look up bees, like there's a connection to the afterlife with bees and stuff like that. And it was thousands of bees I had the morning before, no bees. And that morning, swarm of bees. It was insane. But as the day is progressing and they're prepping me, November 1st, I sit there and I tell my sister, I go, what was the exact time that he died? And she goes, it was like 1 something. Mind you, I was scheduled to come in. I was scheduled to come in at 10 for a 12:30 C-section. And I was like, I call his best friend, his boss, and I go, hey, do you know what's the time that they put as his time of death? And he goes, 1:05 p.m. I go, okay. And I tell my sister, and my sister's like, do you want me to tell them, to hold off, take you? I go, this is how it was planned from like forever ago. I go, I'm going to be, the C-section's at 12:30, like, So they take me in at 12:30 and they prep me and I'm laying there and I'm looking at the clock and it's like, and I still haven't been gutted open, like, and I'm sitting there and I see 12:58 comes around and the nurse comes and goes, in about 7 minutes, you're going to meet your son. And I'm sitting there doing math. And I go, my sister's not in here because my sister was the one who accompanied me for the C-section. Because of course, in a week span, I had to do a will. I had to get a parenting plan in case something happened to me during a C-section because now my husband wasn't there. I had to write a thing, unfortunately, if something happens and there needs to be a decision of me or my son, you have to save me because my daughter needs me. And that's one of the most difficult things to say, like save me and not my baby, because now I'm the only parent. And I had all these things that I had to think about in 7 days. So my sister accompanied me because I knew she would be the strongest one to make the decision if that came to be. But anyways, they start the C-section, the baby's born. My sister went to cut the umbilical cord and I'm sitting there and I'm smiling and I say, what was his time of birth? And the nurse goes, 1:05 p.m.
Wow.
And I lost it.
I was like,
yeah.
I was like, how is it that this happened this way? Like
Wow.
God,
the
universe, life,
timing.
he made his presence known in every moment that he was there. And I know he was there and he's there with us every day. My son had the bassinet. I had it to the left of my bed and he would lay there and look up and giggle and just smile and giggle. And about 6 months after he had been born, I spoke with a medium, an amazing medium. I don't know if you guys believe in those things, but I do. And I was like, I don't know. Like I have taught, I've gone to like tirarse la carta, like Latinas do and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
But like the things that they tell you sometimes is kind of whatever. But I was like, I've never spoken to a medium. This was an American medium in another state, no connection whatsoever. And the lady goes to me, the floor of heaven is about 3 feet off the floor and they are always to your left. And I was like, holy shit. And I didn't tell this lady about this. To my left is my son, and he's always looking up and giggling, which means his dad is always there. So, the woman that I was before, I thought I was mature and I thought that I knew so much about life. But when my husband died, I probably aged like 20 years. My family's supportive and I had people staying with me for 4 weeks. And here and there, people slept over and stuff like that. But the truth is that full house doesn't exist. Uncle Jesse and Joey don't move in to help you raise your kids when you lose a spouse. I had to keep going. Like, I didn't have a choice. And a lot of times people tell me you did have a choice. And I go, I didn't, because my daughter, and my stepdaughter, I mean, I haven't spoken enough about her because in that time, I wasn't involved in her life as much because I had so much going on in my four walls. But Gracie had gone through so much, losing her dad, losing me in a way because a baby was born a week later, and bullshit, I can't give 50-50 attention. Gracie learned to change diapers. Gracie learned to give him his bottle, because sometimes I'd be in the bathroom showering and he'd wake up and he'd be crying bloody murder. And here's my 5-year-old grabbing her little brother and feeding him and burping him just so that I could finish drying off and getting dressed and, taking care of him. So, we both had to grow up so much. Her even more than I wish she would have. But that's life sometimes.
Speechless.
Yeah, I'm like, let me gather my thoughts.
A lot of people ask me, are you upset with God? Do you blame God? And I can honestly tell you that I have made it this far, and I will make it to the end because of my faith and because of my children. I don't blame God. I don't think God chose my husband to die, and much less in that way. I think that was just a life happening, I think our test with God comes when we go through problems like that and we say, are we going to follow our path with God, or are we going to go to the dark side? And I chose to follow my faith. And the blog came from the fact that I couldn't really talk to anybody around me about what I was feeling, other than my therapist, obviously. But in everyday life, nobody understood. And, people got uncomfortable. And if I started crying, then they started crying, or they would walk away because they didn't want to cry in front of me. And I was like, this is normal. Like, let's just talk about it. And they wouldn't talk about it. So I was like, I'm going to start a blog and I'm just going to write. Like, it was not intentional to reach people. It was just, I need a place to just talk about my grief. And I love to write. Sometimes I'm a better writer than others. Sometimes I write very emotionally and there's like 50 commas, and sometimes it's very eloquently put together. But it's literally my thought on what I'm feeling and what I'm saying and what I'm thinking. And I'm like, type, 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 type. And I post it. Sometimes I don't even read it through. I just post it. And it just became a space for me to talk about grief and normalize grief, because nobody around me had ever normalized grief.
Yeah.
My mom had lost her parents. I lost my grandparents when I was very young. My grandfather, I was older. He met Gracie. But my grandmothers, I was young. And I just remember my family, we'd talk about it, this and that. And everybody wore black for a week, 2 weeks. And then they didn't move on in the sense of like, okay, we're done and we're going to party. But they stopped talking about it. They stopped crying, and if people cry, they were like, yeah, tú sabes, cálmate, and that's not true.
You're right.
They do get better, but it doesn't go away, because how do I take away this love that I have for my husband?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with it. What do I do with it? I cry, I express myself, and I grieve him. And just because I grieve him doesn't mean that I don't find happiness, or that I don't laugh with my kids, or that I don't, enjoy going out and dancing. For me, music was so important in our relationship. I have songs sometimes that pop up and in odd places. I went to watch a Cuban play in the middle of Little Havana. It was the first time I went out. And I put on makeup to intentionally go out. I put on makeup to go work at events. I do events, so I can't go, with like a crying face. But this was the first time that I went out. I went out with my sister and 2 friends to watch a Cuban play, to laugh. And we show up, we sit down, and all of a sudden, Ed Sheeran starts playing.
In a Cuban play.
There's Latin music, gente de zona, this and that playing. And all of a sudden, the song that he would put on for me starts playing.
Oh.
And you're looking around like, I know you're here. I know you're here.
Yes.
And I told my sister,
me.
I gotta go outside and catch my breath, because of other, I'm gonna lose him. People are gonna be like, why is this woman crying in the middle of we were waiting for the show to start. And I was like, I need to go get some air. I don't know if I can cuss, but I'm like, this asshole's here. He's here.
Are you gonna let me have a good time? Do I have a curfew right now?
Well, I think it was more of him just saying like, I'm happy that you're out.
Yeah.
I'm happy that you're enjoying yourself. I'm happy that you're going to laugh and,
Crazy. And I know we spoke on and off about grief, right? Because in nuestra cultura, we don't always talk about grief openly, right? There's this pressure, to be strong, keep going, and not to fall apart. Don't talk about it. So how did you start showing up for you? And how did you change that narrative? I know one thing was to write the blog, but what other things did you do to show up for yourself?
Definitely the blog. How did I start showing up for myself? Well, therapy, most definitely. Therapy was very, very important. It's still important. I did it for 2.5 years straight every week. And now I do it as needed. I also started intentionally trying to take care of myself. Like I had gained 42 pounds, and this is not a vanity thing. Like I had the gastric bypass when I was 19, so I had already lost a lot of weight. Like I had dealt with weight issues my entire life. And when I gained the weight in the moment, I was like, okay, I'm not going to worry about how I physically look and how I physically feel. I'm going to embrace it. And whenever I can, I'm going to focus on that. I had to focus first on my mind and my heart and then the physical. I literally had to like divide it and be like, I'm not going to worry about the physical. And I bought myself some new clothes because I didn't have really clothes to get dressed much in that size other than maternity clothes. And I'm like, I'm going to embrace it. I'm just going to do that. And then my parents are the members of a club here called the Big Five Club. And I became a member. Most of it is older Cuban people. When I say older, I mean older, like 55 and up. But in there, I didn't want to go out to like a bar or anything like that because I didn't want to get hit on because that made me very uncomfortable and very sad. Because, men, they hit on you whether you're wearing your wedding ring or not. And I wore my wedding ring for 2 years after he passed. I just didn't want to take it off. And I took it off because it made me sad to look at my ring and not have him. And I replaced it with a ring that I bought for myself. And that ring I don't even wear anymore. But in this club, I found a place where I could go and I could get dressed up and feel good about how I looked and go enjoy music. And I had groups of ladies that were also widows. And even though they were older, they were still very protective of me. And they would, we could dance. And if I was feeling uncomfortable, I'd be like, oh, let's go get some air. And I found a place where, even though it wasn't like my age group or what people would have normally seen as like, why isn't she going out to do? It was the place I needed to be. I needed to be at my old school when I found out. I needed to be here in order to find myself again. And it was a place where I could take my kids, even on a Friday night, even though no kids were there. I could take my kids and they would carry my son around and let him dance on the dance floor, sitting on the floor. And Gracie could dance too with all these new grandmothers that they all gained. That's how I kind of started to find myself again. And like I said, for us, music was so important. For me, music is important. And I think that, and then I started going to a couple of concerts here and there and focusing on work because that for us, our company was our baby, our first baby together. Before we had Gracie and anything, that was our first baby. And I needed to keep it growing in order to honor him and honor all the hard work we had poured in. And I love what I do. And I think that you build yourself up by just facing things. When you block it and you try to avoid things, you're just avoiding the healing.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I'm the kind of person I just hit it. I hit the nail on the head. I'm like, let's just do it.
And that you didn't follow what you should have been doing. Like you followed the community that at the time you felt aligned with. And I love the perspective how you took it of how you look, right? Because I feel that as women, we're so hard on ourselves. No matter what we're going through, we're always criticizing ourselves. And I'm just amazed of how you've handled the situation from day one. Like it's really inspiring. I hope you pat yourself in the back for that, and you remind yourself of how powerful you are. Now, I'm not just saying it; I'm feeling it in my bones. Because any other person would have take, like you said, the dark side, would have blamed God, would have focused on all the wrong things, but you focus on all the right things and the healing, which is what we don't do often. We put everything in the back burner. We'll be okay because of our cultura, the way that we grew up, how we should, that we think society wants us to do. But you did everything the opposite. And I know that's going to inspire someone along the way, if not all the girls and everybody that you're inspiring with your blog, which I was going to ask you, how has that impact others in sharing your journey? Because I know it's been a healing process for you, but also the impact you're making on others.
Yeah. So when Gabriel first passed away, I had friends and like they would send me a lot of, blogs and things like that or Instagrams of other widows that had lost their husbands, pregnant or with little kids and things like that. And some of them had remarried, had other kids. And whenever I would see that, it would break me down even more. I was like, I'm nowhere near there. Still, almost 4 years later, I'm not there. And it doesn't mean that I'm not healing. It's just my focus is in certain things and it's just not that. So when I started my blog and people were like, can Fulanita call you? Can Fulanita message you? She lost her husband and this and that. But even beyond that, it grew to people just reaching out who lost anybody because they were like, I don't know who to talk to about how I feel. A year after he passed, I did a get together and different women came that had lost their spouse. There was one that was actually pregnant whose husband had committed suicide when she had just found out she was pregnant with their second child. There was an older lady who had lost her daughter first and then lost her husband. There was a lady who had actually lost her ex-husband, but they were friends. And she's like, I have my daughter and I'm here because I miss him as my friend, as this and that. But, for my daughter, I had someone who had lost an aunt, and we all came together. And I see sometimes a lot of events that have to do with like grief and this and that, and everything's like joy, 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 and smile and like this. And there's a program and we have to follow this and we're going to talk about inspiration. And I was like, I don't want to do any of that. Like, I don't want to be inspired. I just want to be raw. If we laugh, great. If we cry, great. We're going to eat. And if we're going to drink and whatever, we're just going to let it flow, because that's what I wanted to do. And I have a vision to be able to do more of those things towards the future. But, when I first started the blog and I had that meeting, I was like, I'm going to do this every month. And I'm going to, and I was like, wait, Grace, now I'm adding extra stress to myself.
Yes.
I was like, the only way that I can show up for other people and help them and answer them, their questions and things like that is slowing down. And I was like, you know what? Maybe right now I have a baby, a newborn. I have a little girl. I have my stepdaughter who I want to continue being in her life. And I want to be able to show up to her sports. And I want to be able, and if I start taking on more meetings and things like that, aside from my work that have to do with the blog and this and that, that means I'm going to have less time for my stepdaughter and my two kids at home. So I was like, you know what? Eventually, maybe in 3, 4, 5 years down the line, I'll be able to set up something more. But for now, it's online. And when I can, sometimes I'll be talking to somebody for an hour, chatting back and forth. And sometimes I respond in 3 days. And I'm like, I hope you understand. Like, I had to step back, not because emotionally it was hard. It's just, I have so much and I have to be able to tend to what I have at home before I can tend to somebody else. Cause I'm not giving you my 100 if I'm not giving 100 over here first. So, the community has been something beautiful. It's been great to express myself to other people and to have them express themselves to me and be like, I was there. And I'm not telling you that you're going to, in a year or 2 or 3, be where I'm at, because grief is not linear. It's very up and down. And it might take, maybe you get to where I'm at faster, maybe you get to where I'm at slower. And that is okay. Because even if somebody goes through the exact same thing, has a stepdaughter, has a 5-year-old, is pregnant, everything is completely aligned in the exact same manner, their experience is never going to be like mine. It's just not. Everybody's experience is individual in how you grieve, and how you grieve is fine. And I think that we need to give grace to people who might go into a darker moment, because as long as we don't let them stay there for too long, let them feel it, let them go through it so that they can see how they've grown eventually. We just can't let them stay in there for too long, but let them feel it. Not everybody, I have my dark days, and I've had my dark days. I think I would lie and be like, because then I would be one of those joy people, and I'm not one of those joy people. I've had my dark days and I have my dark moments, but I don't like to stay in darkness. But everybody needs to be given the grace to be in their own darkness when they're hurting so much, but have the hand and the person to be like, come on, let me be in there with you and let me take you out.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And I think that's what I would love to see my blog evolve to.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
Without
What
a
has
doubt.
been some of the feedback you've gotten from family members about your blog?
My family, and I'm not trying to throw shit at them, they're the ones who least talk about it. And sometimes it makes me mad. And I tell them, it makes me mad that I can't express my feelings to you. But other times I'm like, they lost Gabriel too. And my husband was the type of person that made himself beloved and liked. And you'd look at him and you'd be like, oh man, that guy's mad because he had my mom called him el bulldog, the bulldog face. He had this, and my son has the same mug face. And he had a very dry sense of humor. His family was also Cuban. He was born here like I was, but he had a very dry sense of humor. So sometimes my parents didn't understand. And then they'd be like, okay, I get a chiste now. But, for example, we lived with them for about a year and a half after we got married. And sometimes him and my mom had this little argue and love-hate relationship with each other. They loved each other very much, but they would argue sometimes about little things. And sometimes my husband would walk by my mom and be like, dale vieja, muévete, and would slap her butt. And my dad would be like, you're the only man in ever that has ever slapped my wife's butt. And I've been okay. He's like, that's like my mom, So my parents are older. I'm 36. They're 75, 77. They had me a little bit older in life compared to my siblings, so for them, they lost a son too. My sister and my brother lost a sibling. My nieces and nephews loved him very much. As a matter of fact, when I spoke to the medium, he spoke about how he was watching over my sister and her family. So, I get upset. And then sometimes I'm like, not to excuse them, but maybe to just, bring myself down from being upset. I'm like, they lost Gabriel too. And even though they didn't lose him like me, they didn't lose him how my mother-in-law lost him. They didn't lose him how my daughter lost him. They lost him too. And maybe reading what I write and what I have to say is hurtful to them. And I just got to let it go.
I love that perspective. So true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's talk about what comes next. How do you begin to rediscover joy, even if it looks different?
I think joy is, very personal. To some people, joy might be like, oh, she found someone and she's dating and she, the kids have a father figure again and this and that and blah, blah. And to me, that's not joy. Joy to me is finding time for my children and seeing them grow healthy and safe. Joy for me is seeing my company continue to grow and doing what I love. Joy for me is peace. Joy for me is faith. Joy for me is dancing. The last year for me has been very hard because I had a car accident. I was involved in a car accident in August of last year. A lady took a stop sign, flipped my car, spun my car. My car was a total loss. And last year, I had chosen to go to that next phase of taking care of myself, and that was the physical part. I had decided to go on the weight loss injections, and I was going to start the gym. I was just waiting for Gracie to start school again so that I could get into that pattern and not have to worry about her at home and stuff. And a week before school started, we went to Disney. On the way back, had the car accident.
And you were just
And
a
that
few
was
minutes away from the house because I
5
read your
minutes.
stuff,
5
like a
minutes.
few minutes away from the house when
5
the
minutes
accident
from my
happened.
house. 5 minutes from my house at 11:45 at night
Was
on a
everyone
Wednesday.
okay? Were you the only one in the car, or
No,
your
my son
kids?
was in the car and my friend was in the car. My friend had gone to Disney with me, so I didn't go alone. And mind you, we hadn't had vacation because my son had a cast because he broke his leg at the beginning of the summer.
Like,
So that was kind of like the first setback, but I was like, bueno, we can't go to the beach. So when he had the boot, I was like, you know what? We're going to do a quick unplanned trip to Disney because that's the only vacation we get to do before going to school. And my friend went with me. We were in pouring rain in Disney and we had the best time. The best time we had ever had at Disney, like ever. And we get back, I drop off my daughter with my parents so that I could wake up early to get his boot removed. And on the way home, this lady takes a stop sign, flips my car, and all this thing. So the car accident, when I had made a choice that I was better mentally, that I was better emotionally, that now I was ready to go into the next phase of taking care of myself because my kids were fine, my work was going well. I had this accident that set me back, like so far back. So far back from being able to network for my business and continue growing my business. Because if I don't network, I don't have business. I wasn't able to work for 2 months because I was in so much pain in my neck and my back. And I'm still in a lot of pain, but I have to push through it because who else is going to do everything around here? But it set me back a lot. I still, focused on losing the weight and stuff, but I can't exercise like I wanted to, which makes me feel better. It took me away from being able to go dancing, which has been my other therapy because I can't wear heels that long. I can't stand too long because everything hurts. Like my business, when I go out to do my events, I have to hire an extra person that I didn't have to hire before to be with me so that if I have to run or something, I'm like, you need to do it for me because I can't do it. So life keeps throwing these tests at me. And I'm like, Papa Dios, like, I don't want you to do this to anybody else, but like, give me a break.
Of
slow
course.
down.
Déjame respirar. We keep pushing forward, And joy is, joy, happiness, all these things. It doesn't mean that there isn't sad days, there isn't bad moments, but it's a conscious decision to look at the positive things and trying to find the next step. Giving yourself the grace to feel your feelings, but then be like, okay, I got to put my big girl panties on and let's go to the next thing. I mean, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then when I'm upset, because I talk to Gabriel in real life, I'm like, coño, get things going. Mueve las cosas allá arriba. Come on.
That's
Or like when the
beautiful.
kids do something, I'm like, they get this from you.
No.
Or when I'm like stressed out, I'm like, se nota que you're not dealing with it, I talk to him, I'm like, and sometimes it's dark because people are like, my mom or my family over here, and they're like, you're like yelling at him, or like, you're like, I'm like, no, of course.
No.
That a lot of Hispanics, we always say, me cago en tu madre.
Sí.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm like, no, me cago en el padre y me cago en ti. Like,
Enti-
and I know that he's somewhere there laughing, like, yeah, I get it. You get to say that.
It's like, you
'Cause
thought
I'm
you were
here and
getting rid of me? I'm still here, and you're still going to hear
Oh,
from
yeah,
me.
yeah. He's probably having
Yeah.
a blast, like laughing.
But that's the only way, through laughter and real time, make it real.
And I want to touch slightly on one thing. I know you mentioned it about love, but I know this is such a taboo, especially for women, that if you loved and lost, you can't open your heart again. And that you're moving too soon, you're moving too quick, you're not honoring your past. What has that been for you? Like, have you felt that pressure, and how have you felt like navigating through it? Like, it's not about I'm ready for love, but how has that been for you right now?
Well, I'll tell you, at his funeral, I had someone come up to me and tell me, "You're young, you're beautiful, and you'll find someone." And
Gosh.
I didn't punch the person in the face because I was like, I can't afford to get arrested right now.
Yeah.
um,
Wow.
so people want you to move on. And to me, it's so weird. Like, why can't a woman just be happy and strong and be alone and not need a man by her side? You know, I'm going to be very honest and very raw. As a woman, do I have needs? Yes. You know, it took a while before I got there, in the sense of like, I mean, I haven't been with anyone since my husband died. People are like, you haven't had sex since your husband. I'm like, no, I haven't. I'm not there. And I don't know how I will feel someday if I open up myself to that. If I'm gonna completely lose it and this guy's gonna be like, what did I get myself into? You know, I'm gonna sit there and have to give them like an entire, like, here's my book, here's my history. I might lose my shit.
But
You
I
know?
feel like when the time comes for that, when it does come one day, I
Yeah.
think it's going to prepare you because you're getting prepared for that, right? But it is all those thoughts that people
You
think
know,
of.
and that's just being honest. Like, do I have needs as a woman? Yes. You know, sometimes I'm like, maybe I am ready, at least just for that. But other times I'm like, I don't know about that. But in terms of finding, you know, a partner, maybe one day I'll be there. But right now I have no time for everything on my plate. And intentionally going out to date is taking time away from the things that I don't have time for right now, or enough time for. So that means I would have to take time away from home, because I'm Soyla. Yo soy la que limpio, yo soy la que cocino, yo soy la que lavo. You know, I do it all here. I have someone that comes every so often to help me, you know, catch up to things, because I can't do it all. But I take the kids to school. I pick up the kids at school. I build my business. I still find time to write on a blog. I do my social medias. I do it all. So intentionally thinking that I'm going to go out and date or find time and maybe find somebody that could be good for me takes time away from all those other things. And I'm not willing to do that right now. And I don't think that I could ever bring somebody into my bed and my home where my children are, you know, for me to, and maybe it's wrong and maybe I still need more therapy to get through that, you know, but, you know, I can't lay down and go to sleep consciously knowing that there's a man in my bed and my kids are in their rooms. And what if he gets up and, you know,
Of course.
goes do something to my kids, you know, like I think of all these things. And again, maybe I still need therapy, or maybe no, I probably still need therapy for these things, but I'm not there.
Yeah. No.
If
And
I
it's in
had extra
today's
time,
world.
if I
No.
had, yeah, if I had extra time, and that today's world, like I was reading the other day that there's people going out that have HIV and things like that and are, you know, going around infecting people just because. And I'm like, do I need that stress in my life?
Absolutely
No,
not.
I have enough stress already.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and then I've had somebody that was like, "Oh, if you found someone, who would you find?" And I start describing, they're like, "You're describing Gabriel." And I go, exactly, because, you know, that I am in love with my husband and it's hard. You know, I'm not going to find the man that's just going to be there for the day that we want to go to dinner and this and that. And now vete pa tu casa because I got to deal with my kids and you might not see me for 3 months.
Of
Right.
Not
course.
gonna happen unless it's a booty call and I'm not there, you know?
You're amazing,
I
Grace.
commend, thank you. I commend women that have gotten there. I've seen people that have gotten remarried, you know, 1, 2, 3 years later, and they have had more children. Like I know I don't want any more kids. I don't ever want to put myself or my children in a position where they feel less because they have a sibling with both parents. No matter how good that man might be and might treat my children, I don't want children with different last names. It's not anything against single moms or any. I just
Of
don't.
course. Of course.
It's a personal decision, and you know, I don't. Even though they need a manly figure, because I do see little things here and there that I'm like, man, this was different when Gabriel was here. You know, I have my dad, I have my brother. My nephews are 27 and 28. They're not little kids, they're older, they're men. One of them is going to be a dad soon, actually. You know, they have certain men in their lives, they have their godfathers that can provide that guidance. But at the end of the day, I am sufficient. I have to be sufficient to do the role of both of us. And don't wish me a happy Father's Day because that pisses me off. I'm not a dad. I have people that will be
Let's
like on
make it
Father's
clear.
Day.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I have people that tell me happy Father's Day because you're doing the role of both. And I'm like, no, I'm mom.
Yeah.
I'm a woman. And oh, my light went off. I'm a mom. I'm a woman.
Fine.
And I don't need to be called dad, like happy Father's Day. No, that's his place. That's not mine.
That's
And he
powerful.
still does his job from heaven, clearly.
That's probably another sign. Turn off the light. I'm here speaking about
Yeah.
fathers.
I
I
was like,
get
oh,
I
look
like
at
when
goosebumps. I was
him.
like, whoa.
Yes. I'm telling you. He makes himself known.
Wow. Oh
So
my gosh. What kind of advice would you give to someone who's listening right now who still feels stuck in their grief and they're just wondering if they'll ever feel whole again?
I think that if you're stuck in grief, it's obviously you're scared, because when you start doing new things or even the same things you used to do before, you're getting further away from a time with this person. And it happens to me a lot. When I'm going to do something new, I'm like, man, these are new memories that I can't insert him in. In my situation, my son was born. I forcibly had to be happy again. Like I had to smile again. We had no choice. And as much as I wish they would have met in real life, not just in heaven, but in life, that I would have seen them and I would have had at least one picture of them together, I'm happy my son was born after, because it forced us all to be happy. Of course, that's not the same situation for everyone, but in my case, that's how it happened. And I would just tell people, you're not leaving them behind. And I think that's where people get stuck in their grief, is that they think they're going to leave this person behind. Or how can I create memories? Or how is it possible that I could laugh and smile and cry right after? I did it. I remember the first time that I genuinely like belly laughed. And 5 seconds later, I started crying and I was like, how could I laugh? How could I laugh? How could I allow myself to laugh when he's not here? And then I was like, Gabriel would have been laughing. Gabriel lost his dad. So I saw him go through loss and I saw him navigate loss. And he never stopped honoring his dad, even though he continued living life. You know, so if he was able to do that, how could I not do that too, for myself and for my kids and for my mother-in-law? My mother-in-law is a part of my life 100%, you know? And I tell her as well, like, you can't get stuck. Come to my house, come enjoy the kids, have your bad days. We are all going to have our bad days. We can have them together. Sometimes we need space and have it apart, but it's okay to keep moving through. You're not moving forward you're not moving over this, you're moving through it. And you can bring them with you through these new adventures. You don't have to leave them behind, even though physically you might not have the picture or the memory.
But I love how you said that was what I was looking for, honoring, because I feel that we want to continue to carry that. And 20 years later, we're still carrying it with us. And it's more like a guilt or the attachment or like just the thought of us. We can't move forward because we want them in our lives. But I was thinking of the word and you kept saying it because that's how he also took it, is honoring his dad. And that's how you continue to build that legacy. You continue to honor him while you're trying to also move forward.
Mm-hmm. And move forward and through. I think
Through.
people need to know is moving through. You move through your grief. You don't move over it. You move through it, because moving through it is going through the bumpy ride. You know, I have people that have asked me, what is grief? Like I have people around me that have never really dealt with grief. A friend's mom died or this, but they themselves haven't lost someone. And I tell them, think of it as you're on a little boat in the middle of the ocean. Okay. And the purpose of being on a boat is eventually you're going to reach land again. But here's the thing, you're not going to reach land ever again. You're going to live on this boat forever. And what happens when you're in the middle of the ocean? Sometimes the ocean is flat and it's a nice ride. And sometimes it's bumpy because there's some waves, and sometimes it's rough. And that's how it is to be in grief. You live on this little boat where you're never going to reach land, because if you reach land, then you have this person and you're living back in the life that you had before.
So true.
When you lose someone and you have grief, I think you live with grief forever, because grief is love. And I've read this many times here and there. Grief is love that you can't give to the person physically. Can't express it physically. You can't say I love you to them and hear it back. So that's why you experience grief so deeply. And that's why I feel like you need to work through it and feel it all. Feel the good, feel the bad, feel the up, feel the down, because it's just the love that you have and will continue to have for this person that you lost. And that's never going to go away if it was real.
I love that.
It's raw and real. And I know that everybody goes through it one way or the other, but they don't see it with that perspective of like, I just got to move forward, or I just got to stay in the past, but now work through it. And that's a powerful reminder. I love that perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Grace.
didn't come up with it from one day to the next. It's taken time. It's intentional sitting down and like putting my thoughts together, and definitely reading books, therapy, prayer, community, because it's not easy to just do it alone. And I do a lot of my life alone, Because what comes with grief is definitely a lot of loneliness because people don't know how to handle your grief. And much less when you're as vocal as I am. They're like, I don't know about that. I don't want to go over there and feel the feelings
Want
with
to
her.
go over
And
there.
it's okay. It's okay.
You're still with the
It's
smile
okay.
on your face. You're like, it's okay. And that's what makes you you. And I love it because you're giving me so
Thank
much.
you.
I have like, I'm crying and I'm emotional, but you're giving me so much peace in a way because of the way that you're handling it and with your smile and just how you see life, right? It's so beautiful, especially with everything you've been through.
For my kids, and I see it through my daughter and how she expresses her feelings. My daughter has ADHD, and it's not something that I've actually spoken out loud about because I think also the community and dealing with any kind of special need. I mean, I'm thankful that it's ADHD and not something more, but it's been hard to navigate if I have to lead with the example for her to follow, especially with the ADHD. And if you read on ADHD and grief, when they go like this, it's like a nuclear bomb. So that's been something that I've had to deal with also after Gabriel. And I have to lead with the example. So I tell her we got to be happy. We have to feel our feelings. And when we're not happy, we got to express ourselves. And just because we're not having a good day doesn't mean we can treat anybody else bad or put anybody else down. And if we do, because we're human, we need to say, I'm sorry. I just was not having a good day. It was nothing to do with you. It was all me. It's hard. And it's not, like I said, I don't have this positive attitude every day because I don't. But that's why I like being authentic and being raw. And like, I write about the good days, I post about the good days, but I also post about the really shitty, deep down, dark days so that people know it's normal, it's human, and it's the experience that I'm living. And if
Thank
it
you.
makes somebody uncomfortable, then you're not for me right now.
There you go.
And if you
Absolutely.
ever come back into my life, you're gonna have a completely different position in my life. Because either you deal with me now and go through it with me, or, you know, I wish you well.
There you go. I applaud you for that. That's powerful. And the way
I
you
love
handle it with your daughter, that's beautiful. Grace, I don't want to let you go because it's like your story, your words, like your
I know.
encouragement, everything you've built, what you've been through, like it's so inspiring, but heartbreaking at the same time, like a mix of emotions that I just want to thank you for sharing that today, for being vulnerable. I know it's hard, especially with today's world and overall with dealing with your own emotions and still having to show up for everyone else, including your family, your loved ones, social media, your community. I applaud you for that. And I want to remind you of your power. Like,
Thank you.
so powerful. And before, of course, we wrap up, you already know what time it is, pero esta vez we want to shift it a little. If your tia chismosa, the one who always had something to say at the family gatherings, could see the women you've become, all that you've lived through, what would she say about the way you loved and grieved?
Well, I think my tía chismosa would want, first of all, say que I'm una música poeta y loca
Love
because
that.
my life has evolved in many ways that I never thought it would. From being a little girl saying that I wanted to be an attorney and go into politics and be the first female president to not doing any of that. Like I worked in the cigar industry for 5 years. That's how I met my husband. And now I started an event company 10 years ago with him. Life literally looked nothing like what my tia Chismosa thought it would be. But if it's my Cuban tia chismosa, she wouldn't be talking about my grief, to be honest. Let's be honest, because la tia chismosa would not be talking about that, but she would be saying, I think she would be proud of how I've come around, even though I have lived a very interesting life in many ways. I have authentically lived it at every point. From enjoying my time in the cigar industry and traveling all around the United States and being the only female in a room full of men smoking cigars and standing my ground in my space, to becoming soft as a wife and as a mom and authentically doing my business because I love doing events. I love planning events. I love dealing with my clients and seeing their vision and their dreams come true because I orchestrated it. So I think my tia Chismosa would just be like, she's lived life raw and authentically, a little hard around the edges, not for everybody, but she's all like, I am who I am everywhere I stand. Even when I'm around people that I know don't like me or that I don't care too much for, I will continue being who I am. And I don't have to talk behind anybody's back and I don't have to do any of that because it's just not
I
who I
love
am.
that.
I live straight to the point at every turn.
Beautiful. Don't ever change that. I love that.
Thank you.
I love that. Grace, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a voice for grief, right? Because that is such a taboo in our community. Like we've mentioned before, it's something that we don't speak on. So thank you so much for being that voice, especially for the next generation, right? Your kids. So thank you so much. And of course, before we wrap up, is there any exciting projects coming up or any events or just ways that our audience can follow you?
Well, to follow me, I have my social medias. The blog is obviously on Instagram and Facebook, the Grieving Wife blog, and everyday life. I post there my stories, and I continue writing here and there. I don't write as often, but I write intentionally when needed. There's also my events company, Divinely Social, which can also be found on Instagram and social media at Divinely Social. We do events of all kinds from corporate weddings, showers, social gatherings, galas, holidays, everything. We do it all. And then I have Grace Sotolongo, which is like the first page I ever started. And if you go through the doom scroll all the way back, you're going to go all the way back from my cigar industry days and see my entire life evolve.
Love that.
And exciting projects. I'm on the board for the Virtual Mom Collective, and we have our event coming up in September. So go to the Bridging the Gap, go to the website and join us. That's a very powerful group helping moms all around the country and in Miami. So
Yeah, we'll be there. I'll be there.
I
and
know.
I know Cynthia will be there in spirit.
We'll
Yes, I'm gonna
FaceTime
miss
her.
it.
We'll just
I
put her
know
there on
that.
FaceTime.
We are. That was already going to be done. But we'll for sure include everything also on the show
you.
notes. So don't worry about that, for sure. We will. And just know that, again, we will support you guys however we can, Grace. So thank you for
Thank you.
showing us that grief and joy can coexist, that healing is possible, and that we're never alone in our pain. We're so honored to have had you. And for anyone listening, this is your reminder: your story matters, and there is light after darkness.
Definitely, there's light after darkness.
Yes.
Thank you
And don't
both. I
forget,
appreciate you
Thank
both.
you.
yes. And to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Y como siempre, chicas, we'll see you next time on Taboo Talk Latina Edition, where we keep breaking cycles, breaking silence, and breaking these taboos.